Hello, and welcome back. Today I'd like to talk to you about the M&P 2.0 9mm handgun and how it compares to the Glock, this one being a Gen 3. This one is Saul's, not mine, but I've shot it quite a bit, and everybody knows a Glock. And I felt like if I'm going to review this, we gotta talk about how it compares to this, because just about everyone who buys this is going to inevitably compare it to how does it stack up against the big name brand on the block, the Glock. It's just kind of inevitable. Glock's been around for so long that if you talk about one, you're inevitably going to talk about the other. So, first thing we should get into is the sights. Right now, the sights on this guy are these glow sights. This one has an orange at the front with a green in the center, and then this one is usually blacked out in the rear and has tritium in there for when it is night. Those are not the stock sights that came on this. I changed those out later because it was just a simple 3-dot setup, and the Glock, of course, has its typical U and dot, which some people love, some people hate. I don't personally like. I feel like the dot just disappears all over the place. That's why I like the contrasting colors. Honestly, the only way that this could be better is if these were green all the time and glowed at night. That way you have the contrast with the orange all the time. That's the way that I like it. That's the way that I like to shoot. Other people have different opinions. Other people shoot different. Other people see different. Just kind of how it is. These new sights, however, have been great. They've been very accurate, and since I bought them from my local gun shop, they installed them for free, because they're great. The gun shop, that is. And, I mean, the sights are also great. But, anyway, the stock sights on this were nothing to write home about. Just the typical 3-dot that seems to be on everything under the sun. I mean, they worked, but I actually planned on carrying this, possibly. If I go in a woods or down a trail or something, I might want to take this. And so if it starts to become like dusk and I'm beset by rabid rattle yotes or something out on the trail, might want to be able to see my sights. Saul is thinking about changing out the sights on his Glock. Don't know when, don't know to what. That'll be a different video. Moving on. So, the trigger. This one has this sort of actuating trigger. I planned on changing this to an Apex. Haven't gotten around to it. Have many other guns with many other projects. Just sort of got pushed to the wayside. The Glock has its typical solid trigger with the little dingus in there. And they both work. The actual trigger pull is slightly better with this one. This one is a bit more crisp. Yes, I did clear these guns before we did this. It's a bit more crisp up until you get to this wall, and then it has a solid break. It's not necessarily light, but it's good enough to where you know it's a pretty alright trigger, especially considering it is out of the box. This is an M&P 2.0, so this trigger is better than the old ones. The grip texture is also better than the old ones by a lot. Compared to this one, where it's just a bunch of take up until you get to that same kind of wall, but then it's just mush until you get to it just breaking. And I don't like it. I find this to be a lot better. The Apex trigger that I want to go with is the flat face with the light and springs, make this just an incredibly good trigger. But out of the box, it's better than the Glock, which maybe isn't saying much, maybe it is, but I like it. The grip for the 2.0s and also I believe the 1.0s, you had interchangeable back straps. I have, I believe, the medium one on here. You have one that's just a massive palm swell, one that's just a tiny little petite thing, and then this one being in the middle. The grip texture is nice and grippy, and I have used this for quite some time, so its grippiness has actually gone slightly down and it's gotten to a comfortable level, whereas before it was like holding on to sandpaper. make of that what you will. It's actually good if it's overly aggressive, and then you can dull it down later, because it's kind of a pain in the ass to try and add grip, then just take it away. Whereas the Glock is fairly smooth. I can easily just rub my finger around on here. Not so much with this. It's got these goofy little finger grooves that some people like, but just about everyone that I've talked to absolutely hates, which is why on the Gen 5s they went to the smooth front from the Gen 2s on the Glocks. This one has smooth, no finger grooves, but it's also still very grippy. Very controllable. I really like this gun, can you tell? So, the takedown on this is fairly simple. What you do is you drop your mag, you bring it back, and then you just pull the trigger and it slides off. I probably didn't show that very good. So if you see, there is this notch. You line up this top of here with there, and then you just pull it back, flip that switch down. So now the switch is down, and you pull the trigger, and the slide comes right off. And it's just that simple. So just go ahead and reassemble it real quick. The Glock is a three-handed affair where you got to pull down both of these, and I ain't going to do it because I don't feel like dicking with it, and it's a pain in the ass. This one wins hands down in that category. Absolutely. Once you actually get the slide off, they're fairly similar. It's just a modified Browning system, and there's nothing really special about that. But magazines and the mag release. Mag release on this is nice and pronounced, but it's also not obnoxiously sticking out. It's in a nice like little cutout of the frame, so you can definitely get your finger on it and pop that mag out. Don't even need to really adjust your grip. I just sort of like can't. No, this isn't, it's going up into the air. I'm not pointing it at my head, don't worry. But you just got to can it a little bit, and you can hit it with your thumb. So, this one is really tiny and very square. And it's also very mushy, and you got to push real hard, and that mag just sort of right out of there. Whereas the follower has a nice amount of push on this, and it just pops it out of there. Pretty good. Slides out. The actual mags themselves, obviously, Glock mags are Glock mags, and everybody loves Glock mags. But that doesn't mean that these are bad. The Smith & Wesson stock mags are pretty good metal magazines, so, you know, they are what they are. People have been using metal magazines for a little over 100 years now, so I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with them. It's just that the polymer-coated steel magazines of Glock are obviously proven and are very, very good. Even the knockoff ones tend to be very good because it's just such a good design. So I kind of got to give the point where it's due. The Glock kind of has better mags, but these aren't terrible, and so long as you don't get Pro Mag magazines, for the most part, you'll be good. Just get the Smith & Wesson ones. I think they're like $5 extra. Don't be too cheap. So, the guide rod, if you can see it, is totally metal on the M&P, whereas it's, I think, polymer and polymer with a little bit of some like metal coating on the Glock. Obviously, metal is better than polymer, and it's not exactly the most wearing of parts, but polymer is going to wear out a lot quicker than metal will. So it's just one of those things that for longevity and replacement parts purposes, you don't have to worry about it as much for the M&P. So another point to the M&P. So, how many times can I say so during this review? The rail has 3 slots, means that you can put a bit more stuff on this guy than you can on this guy, but considering your choices are usually lights, lasers, and maybe a bipod, if you're feeling adventurous, it doesn't matter too much. But more options is always nicer. And that brings us to about the end of the review. And I think the last thing I want to hit is the safety and the overall aesthetics, which this one has a actual manual safety. You can get it without. I personally like to have safeties on my handguns and most guns for that matter, simply because while the guns themselves are safe and you can argue, this is my safety, okay, sure, but the reason I own guns in the first place is because shit tends to happen, and having a gun helps fix it when it does. Safety is just another thing that says, hey, sometimes things happen. Sometimes your holster is bent because you bought a cheap Mike's holster and it caught the trigger, and now you have a hole in the back of your pants because you didn't have a safety. I know, probably about as cringy to some people as this is my safety, but it's just how I like to do. And you can choose to get it without it. I choose to get it with. And I feel more confident with the safety than without. But the aesthetics, obviously, I think that the lines on this are much nicer. You got this cool sort of like wavy technique on the slide serrations. You got mini slide serrations up here. You got this nice definition to the slide, and it's all smooth and curved and contoured. And then you got a block. It's just a rectangle with a grip. Look at it go. I mean, it kind of has its own like industrial sort of aesthetic to itself, but at the end of the day, it's a rectangle with a grip on it. And if it wasn't for the little finger nubs, it'd be a rectangle with a rectangle. It is what it is. But considering that this is in the stock, this is in the $500 to $550 range, and this is now up in the $700 range, brand new. Glock, what are you doing? But that's just that. So, this has been another adventure into the reviews of guns on this channel. I hope you enjoyed our time. Hope it gave you something to think about. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Goodbye.